Hi everybody, and welcome back to Blitzkrieg Modelworks. I'm Bob, you know me as Darkla on the forums. How you doing everybody? Well, let's talk trees. As part of the diorama portion of the Leopard 2 beginners build, for those of you that have been following me on the YouTube Modelers Google Plus page, you know, and I've had a little adventure trying to find proper foliage that I like. Finding decent pine trees or evergreens is quite difficult. Without spending an arm and a leg on stuff, including shipping. So I have resorted to building my own. You can certainly buy stuff from like Woodland Scenics, for example, at a model railroad shop, but when you really look at them, they don't look anything like an evergreen tree in a 1/35th scale setting. They're certainly fine in HO model railroad, but not for our scale. So normally what I use, and what I've done in the past, is I use something called asparagus fern. And this is asparagus fern. And I don't have a lot. That's all I've got left out of this whole big, huge package. And I would need quite a bit more to be able to do all the trees that I needed, and I can't seem to find anything locally. So I just happened to be in a craft store here you find in Canada and the US. You might have something similar overseas called Michael's, and I found this stuff. I'll show you the tag here. This is what it says. It's just called bush, and you get, trying to get this under the camera, you get a lot of this stuff. There's 3 branches on this one, and I've already used one to do that one tree. And if you see, this is actually just a plastic fern with static grass pre-applied at the factory. I thought I would give this a go for the price, and I did this tree. Bring this up to the camera. Let's take a look. Using nothing more than these, and you don't even have to cut them off, they're actually plastic plugs, and painted it with an airbrush with just 50-50 mix of XF26, Tamiya XF26 deep green, and isopropyl alcohol. And just airbrushed it, shot it, cut the pieces off. I didn't even use everything off of that one. I've still got lots left. This is the remainder. So when you get it off, you have to cut them off, and then they all seem to have this tendril on them. So I trim them down so they look like so. Okay. Now normally, when people have seen tutorials for doing these types of trees, excuse me, a bit of a cold, and a big thing is the trunk. Some people will use a dowel, some people will carve it, a dowel to a taper, some will use like a florist wire wrapped in florist tape, and it's tuck the grass in. Me being very experimental, I went into my backyard and I cut an actual branch off of a pine tree in my backyard. I let it sit for a couple of weeks to dry out, and so these come off much easier. I've got these damn needles all over my house now. And then I just cut off an appropriate branch, and if you look, you can kind of see in between there. I don't have to paint anything, I don't have to detail anything. Yes, there is some, you can still see the super glue. That's what I used to put these on with, and that will all disappear when I spray on some white glue, a white glue and water mix, because I'm going to have snow on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut the camera off for a second while I'm going to take this branch off and get everything set up, and I'm going to try and assemble one of these for you in front of the camera. I'm going to try and prep some of these, and I'll show you how I do it. It's very, very simple. This is one of the easiest ways to do trees I have ever tried, and while the the asparagus fern stuff, and there's some other products you can use too that look like that, look good, that'll look better than this. It's a lot more work, and the product, the end result is a lot more fragile to deal with, which once it's on the base, it's not a big deal. So anyway, I'm just going to cut away for a second and get some stuff set up, and I'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Now, as you notice, I don't know if it shows up on the camera, we're doing this, you will get static grass all over the place when you do this. So try and keep it localized in one little area, and then sweep it up or vacuum it up once you're done so it doesn't get into your finished product when you're done later on. Something I meant to mention earlier is if you can't find this stuff with the static grass on it, and you can find, because I know I've seen just the plastic ferns themselves, you can always go to your local model railroad store and you can get static grass in many different colors. Don't think you'd want to use this one for pine trees. This one's kind of on the light side too, but you can always paint just like I did, so it doesn't really matter what color it is. And you can always sweep up the excess and throw it back in there. You could do that with this, actually, come to think of it, although there's not going to be a huge amount. Excuse me. So what I've done is I've cut all the pieces off that I think I'm going to be using and trimmed them, and these are the tendrils that get cut off the very tips. And I just cut them square off, nothing fancy, just like that. This tree, I counted it out, it has 22 layers of branches, including the one that I threw right on the very tip. Excuse me. This particular tree, let me get a figure for reference, it measures an actual 5.5 inches. So if I did the math right, that works out to about 16 feet or 5 meters more or less. The one that I'm going to do to show you is going to be quite a bit smaller. I'm going to have this one in the back of the leopard diorama, kind of on the edge of the road. It's going down a single lane country road. And I'm going to have a couple of smaller ones. There's going to be this one and then one even smaller. I might not even use them. I might not. I've got some other ideas. I'll kind of play around with it. And if I don't, well, I've got some lovely small little trees to show you. I did try drilling various sizes of pin drills. Doesn't really work for this. It works very well for the asparagus because excuse me, the branches are small enough, but these, unless you do a little bit of work, you just end up cutting them off square. So the easiest thing for you to do is just to glue them in place. I just used a gel type super glue. I have got a couple of glass sheets on either side of my workbench, and I just glob the stuff right on there and then use accelerator both on this, and then when I'm done with it I shoot accelerator on the glob of super glue, and once it's done I use a razor blade to clean it up and get rid of it. Now there's no real hard and fast rules for how to do this. When I did this one, just throw it so you can see the bottom, you can see I started in a triangular pattern, and then the next layer up I went the opposite triangular pattern, and I did that all the way up until I started getting to the really small stuff, and then I started doing it in fours, in quadrants, all the way up until you get to the top when it's just like, okay, it's getting kind of crowded up there because there's not a lot of room, and then you just kind of do it haphazardly. The stalk or the trunk on this one could have been bigger, but looking around my neighborhood at various evergreen trees, both on public and private land, there are some pretty scraggly ones that get to about this height, even more gnarly than this one's bent. But I thought this gives it a lot of a lot more visual interest. I like to use these alligator clips to hold stuff like this. The only other thing you're going to need is Instaset or Zap-A-Gap or some type of accelerator. What this stuff does, if you've never used this before, is when you put the super glue on in place, you give this a little squirt. Normally I like to use I just like to unscrew it and use the eyedropper, but in this case it's a little difficult to line everything up. I only got two hands. You just spray it on, wait for the glue to set, and then you move on to the next branch. So what we're going to do is I use some smaller ones and I kind of sorted stuff out. Oh, there's one with a big tendril still on it. Some of the bigger branches I'm not going to use for something this small, because it's going to be, those are huge for a tree that would be this size, so I might end up just cutting them if I need more. This one I'm figuring will have about 8 to 10 different layers, including the very top. So I don't normally do this, but just to show you how normally I just put a drop on a sheet of glass and I kind of scrape it up on there. I'm not overly fussy with it. I put it on, I kind of figure out how I want it to sit, and I have to see how much stock I have in place, because you don't want to put this stuff too low because the boughs aren't going to be that low to the ground. A little shot, and then you wait. That's good. I'm just going to do the scraping on the side. It just goes a little bit faster for me that way. And you don't have to get it like perfectly even, but you don't want it like totally off the wall either. And done. And move that around so I can get to this side. If this will fit. And you will get ones that are like really gnarly looking. And you can, they're very flexible plastic. I tried using a blow dryer. It didn't seem to matter whether I did that or just did it by hand like that. Once they're kind of bent, they more or less stay there. And I put a fairly healthy glob of super glue on. Now even that branch is rather big, but I think I can get away with it. Maybe not. So before it really cures up, you just pop her off. Trim about 1/2 centimeter off. Yeah, that looks better. And it just happens to fit in the same slot more or less. Now don't worry about it going darker with the accelerator. The accelerator, once it off gases, whoops, sorry, and dries, it'll be fine. It'll go back to that nice deep green color of Tammy or whichever brand you decide to use. So let's see, we have this one and this one, and we'll just cut them all down so they're about the same size. Cut that off. And about there. So the first couple layers you want to be pretty much the same size. You want to go biggest on the bottom, going to smallest up top. And if you get ones like, for example, this one, there's not so much static rest there, lots more on that side. You want to put the stuff with the more static rest facing up, because that's what your audience will be seeing. And I go up, third, 1/2 centimeter, 1/8 of an inch or so. About that far apart. Just keep moving around. Get in there. Now if you get it on and it's just barely sticking with some super glue, once everything's set up and you're happy with its location, don't be afraid to go in and say use a little dollop to help reinforce it. It's a bit much, but that's right. Like I said, there's going to be snow on this anyway. In this case, you could even use some slightly less viscous stuff. little more runny. And get another one prepped. I'm done. And there. And then when you look from the side, you can see I'm not trying to make it nice and perfectly even. Nature is somewhat chaotic. So once you get up to this height, I'm just trying to go through what I've got here sorted. You start getting a lot smaller. I probably should have made these quite a bit smaller, but we do have lots of the bigger ones, and I just have to kind of see whereabouts we want to be. And we'll cut them off to about here. Let's grab another one, do that. Another one on top, do that. I'll do a couple of layers of this. Almost with the bald side up. Now if you don't have accelerator, you don't need it, but it's going to take you an awful lot longer to do this. Accelerator speeds this up incredibly. Just squirt some more glue out here in a sec. As you can see, it's shaping up fairly nicely. Let's grab 3 more. Turn this stuff all off. Oops. One just shot out of my hand. There we go. Another 3. Get some glue. One of these days I'm just going to get an eyedropper bottle for this stuff, because the smell of the accelerator really annoys me. I tend to be very sensitive to smell. And I don't mind paint. I don't even mind lacquer. But for some reason, accelerator just is nauseating to me. And it seems like such a waste, because I know I'm using way more than I need to get the job done. And I don't know if you can see it on camera. I know my fingers are probably buggering up the blur or the focus. But you can actually see the super glue cure. Just going to check and see. Yeah, I might be able to get away with some of the smaller stuff now. So there's some stuff that I've gotten that's really small. And this isn't compared to basically little. We started off with stuff about that big. Then went to stuff about that big. And now we got this big. And I've actually got them all the way down to that. So about the size of a grain of rice. That's what I would put on top, although this one has a nice little little nub on the top where it would have sprouted and kept growing the branch next year. And I might just leave that and maybe tint it with a little bit of green paint to show it off. And as I said to the guys on the Google Plus group, prep time takes most of the time doing this. It's sorting everything out. Gluing is a bit on the tedious side, but it's not that bad. It's just very repetitive. Now at this point you could even start going in 4s, which I think is what I'm going to do for a layer, maybe 2, just to kind of help fill things in. Don't be worried about making everything line up perfectly square. Like I said, nature's a little on the chaotic side. This thing's looking, I know it's looking awfully wet. It's because of all the accelerator. Once I'm done, I'm going to stop the camera and we'll kind of let everything dry off a bit, and then I'll show you the finished results. And I'll just try and leave everything the way it is here. See, I'm going to use some really small ones now. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it'll be 7 or 8 layers of branches on this one, as opposed to the 21 plus the crowning one on the other unit. And goody me, I just glued my fingers together. The one that's holding the branch, actually. Not an uncommon occurrence around here. Get my fingers apart enough. There we go. That's a pretty gibbled looking branch. Still soft enough to twist, good enough. And now I think I've got just enough teeny tiny ones, and I don't trust my fingers after just gluing them together, so I'm going to use some tweezers. Oops, sorry guys, not in camera. Pay attention, I'm doing this for you. And last one, if I can find it, there it is. And I still have enough of this stuff left over to do a whole other tree about this size. And that is it, my friends. That's all there is to it. Very, not overly quick, but pretty simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up at an angle. You can kind of sort of see it like that. I'll probably paint that or maybe cut it off and put a tip on the end. I'm just going to leave it like this and let everything dry, let all this accelerator dry off. And then you'll see what she looks like when she's done. So we'll see you in a second. Okay, welcome back. Looks like this is dried off enough. Oh yeah. The glue itself is still, you can still see it shiny. But when I mix up a mixture of white glue and water to kind of spray on here and then sprinkle baking soda on top for snow, that should all disappear. I hope. That's the plan. I'm probably going to cut this off and put a little piece on like this, but now you can see we have big tree, little tree, and I hope this encourages some of you to try some of this on your own. Experiment with some of your local flora and fauna that you find around there. This would be flora. Don't want to be using animals on this stuff. If you can't find anything like this, later on when I get a hold of some of the asparagus fern, I'll do another video. It's a little more difficult to do this because you really do have to drill holes in there, but at least you can use white glue, but it takes forever to dry. This is a lot faster. It's a lot rougher as well, but realistically, I mean, these look a heck of a lot better than anything a model railroad shop is going to be selling, other than some really high-end stuff. Okay, so any questions, constructive comments, please, as usual, in the comment section down below. And feel free to like and subscribe if you have not already for more updates. I am a fairly slow builder, as some of you have noticed. I run my own business and I work like 12, 14 hours a day. So I usually get 1 or 2 days a week off to be able to do this kind of stuff. And then I'm usually processing videos at work. I'm the boss, so I can get away with that. But my internet at the store is horrible, so I have to bring everything home and upload here. Otherwise it takes like 10 hours to upload a 5-minute video on YouTube. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And take care. Talk to all of you later.